I mean, for me, it started, seventh grade, walking out on that mat, in the compulsory uniform of that era, which is a pair of tights and a singlet. I mean, you want to talk about courage? Forget winning and losing. That was courage enough, just walking out in front of all my peers in that outfit. But Coach, our mat room was up on the stage, and Coach had these tagboard signs, takedowns, and all these different takedowns, reversals, all these different reversals, escapes, all these different escapes, these technical boards that he'd put up. And I started memorizing those. As I learned them physically, I would memorize them, and I would go home at night and I would lay in bed and I would think of those tagboard signs and visualize the ones I knew until I knew them all three of those signs. I had them memorized. Well, I was visualizing, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know that was actually the right thing to be doing, is picturing myself doing those tactics and those techniques from those tagboard signs in the seventh grade. Now, fast forward to, being a 20-year-old, winning my first national title in Greco-Roman wrestling as a soldier, and I'm in the mix to make the Olympic team in 1988. And it wasn't until 1991 that I actually made the national team. And then, as the group, ranked 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6, we were all part of the national team. And they had a sports psychologist assigned to us. He wrote books, he had all this stuff, and we were literally given his number. Call him anytime you want. And he would do group stuff in national camps with us, sit us all down, and we'd do all these crazy exercises, learn all these modalities that were in that mental skills framework. And all this visualization and stuff started coming up from him, a professional psychologist, and these light bulbs started going off. Like, oh my God, I've been doing this since I was in seventh grade. And I didn't know that I was doing the right thing. So now I had actual terms and language that went with this thing that I'd started doing as a kid by accident. And so it got refined, learning how to frame things positively, learning how to do a relaxation and visualization exercise. I mean, he taught me all these things through working and trying to get the most out of my body, mentally and physically, to win that gold medal. And so I felt very fortunate then when I made the transition to fighting in a very volatile sport, that I had those skills in my tool belt that not a lot of the other guys I knew from MMA had. And I could start passing on some of that to the fighters that I worked with and teaching them some of those same mental skills that I developed by accident as a junior high school wrestler, and then on purpose when I was exposed to B.Z. Hendricks and the sports psychologist. But at the Olympic level, you're going to see that sports psychology is a huge thing. Every team has a sports psychologist that is assigned to them. You see skiers, and they're at the top of the slope. They aren't even wearing their damn skis, but they're in their mind making every turn on that slope before they ever put their skis on to go down that slope. They've seen every one of those corners and every one of those turns and saw themselves navigating that, just like we did the lemon exercise here. You have a very physical response to those pictures that you put in your head. It's an amazingly powerful thing. And again, lends itself to the conscious created reality that we live in. We all have that capability to manifest what we want. I think that's what Christ was trying to teach us. They took his message and twisted it into this control and fear that we live under now. That wasn't what he was trying to do. He didn't come here to be worshipped and start a religion. He was trying to teach us how to ascend, how to become closer to the source. He didn't want to be worshipped. He didn't consider himself a god. They took that language and the things he said and twisted it into what we have as man's religions now. And they all have very similar origins if you go back and look at it. So it's interesting. But again, physical, we have a lot more affinity because we're in these physical bodies to focus on the physicality of what we're trying to do instead of getting our spirit, our soul right. So that once we have both things firing, boy, we're going to be very, very tough to deal with. You're going to be very successful, and you're going to be taught very hard to get off track and derail from accomplishing what it is you set your mind to. If you got this going and this going, you're going to be hell on wheels, if that makes sense.
I'd have to answer a bit differently, but just different experience. But I think, a lot of the early part of my life was seeing things that I didn't want. I had a lot of negative role models, which were still valuable, but I had a lot of negative role models around me that, my dad wasn't around much, but when he was, my parents were very violent with each other, yelled at each other a lot. And I remember being about 4 and watching that and being like, I don't want to live my life that way. And I'm just a little kid, but I thought like, I don't want to be that way when I'm an adult. I don't want to be that way with my woman. We're not going to be hitting each other or raising our voice to each other. I'm not going to have that type of relationship. And my father went to prison when I was 7. And my uncle as well. So there's kind of the main male role models that would have been that way. So yeah, I had my middle class grandfather that was a good man. He was a good grandfather. He was an utterly middle class guy. Didn't have a whole lot of wisdom about money or life, but was a decent man and tried to spend time with me and point me in the right direction as best he knew how to. And I have a warm spot for him because of that. But my mother was a crazy, and there's times she just mismanaged money, mismanaged everything in her life really. And yeah, I know there's some of those things I don't love talking about, but there's times you don't have food, which I didn't really enjoy that. And in America, it seems like food's a pretty normal thing that most families have. There's times there was food, and I just knew she was in a bad mood, and I knew if I come out of my bedroom right now that I have to make an assessment of violence of what's going to happen if I just walk out of my bedroom because she's just in one of those type of moods today, and be like, well, maybe I don't want to eat before I go to bed. So, I had a lot of negative role models, and, the people around me, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of violence, and those are valuable lessons, and you have to make, some key decisions. Well, how do we make things better, And I think I went very far away from any sort of spirituality, anything that I said my little prayer to God, like, my grandparents were Catholic people. I'd say neither of my parents were sincerely religious in any way, but my mother would pretend to be. And you say your little prayer to God the way that your, Catholic grandparents teach you to or something, and God was busy doing whatever else he was doing, but he wasn't focused on me at that time. By about age 10, I thought, well, what can I do to affect the circumstances here, What are the things that I have control over that I can focus on to make something better? That was one of the most important thoughts I ever had in my life. And I still have that thought every day today. It's like, well, what are the things that I could do better? What could I do different? What am I not paying attention to? What else could I do? And if you ask any of my coaches that, a ton of these people, if you ask any of them, I plague them with that question, and I try to be, I don't wish to annoy them, but as a constant of like, what could I do better? What am I missing? What am I missing? And somebody says, oh, you're doing really good. Well, what would perfect look like? How would we get closer to that? And I mean that sincerely. It's not a smart-ass question. Like, I'll go put in the work. And also, if you ask anybody that trained with me, any of my main coaches, they tell you, like, you come back a month later, 2 months later, there's significant improvement every time. 'Cause that was something that I was very proud of, that if I was going to ask people of that caliber and accomplishment in your industry to come spend time with me and teach me the best lessons they learned in, decades of experience in that field, I felt like it was my duty. I'd feel ashamed if I didn't make notable progress. By the time that person comes back again, they should be like, God damn, you're doing good there. So, all right, what's next? And do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And I had a lot of people coming, and I was, training damn near every day. The slow points, still over 200 days a year, 200 and some days a year with, top level people training. I never missed one MMA session. And if you ask any of my coaches, they'll tell you that too. I didn't miss one. I never missed one. And I had plenty of injuries and plenty of problems and plenty of things that came up. Ask Jake Shields what time we'll wrap up training. Sometimes 6 in the morning. Ask Frank Mir. So I know you know those guys, and they're right here in town. Ask Frank Muir if the sun's coming up. We're still in the training room. We're lifting weights after training, you know? So I never missed one workout like that. And I think, you know, some of those negative things, that gave me good guidance, of like, you know. And I think the main sticking point is like, I wish I had better mentors and coaches earlier, and I didn't have that. So I had to go earn that in university. I had to go earn that, you know, for graduate school. I had to go earn that in, you know, real life business, to find people that were older than me and smarter than me that had, especially in real estate. If you want to be good at real estate, you're going to find some old guy that made a lot of money in real estate to help you understand what the is going on. And, you know, it's easier to learn from other people's mistakes than to make them yourself. So it's a lot more fun to have coaches and mentors and teachers to say, you know, hey, you got to be careful here because of this. Hey, you know, make sure you know, there's this opportunity available that it's right here. You're just not paying attention. Just look right here. There's this opportunity. And man, that's so useful. Self-determination, bullet points. It's like you got to be responsible for your outcomes. And, you know, some of you still got a little boy's voice in your head, a little child voice. You want your mommy or somebody to do something for you. Some of you still got that. I'm not even making fun of you. It's just true. It's just true. And you got to get rid of your, you know, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it's not your mommy's job to change your diaper anymore. So you got to say, all right, what can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And I think second thought, I'll reiterate, is if you can't outperform the people that are currently in your professional environment, then that's exactly where you're going to stay. If you can't do better than those people, that's exactly where you belong, and you're going to be right there. And maybe it's going to get worse, but it's definitely not going to get better. And third thought is, I think it's very important to have, you know, coaches, teachers, mentors. Find somebody who did the things that you want to do, that did it at an equal or higher level than you're aspiring to. And man, you can learn so quick when you got those type of people to point you in the right direction. It's like the map you said. If you're going to go from here to Texas, why the hell would you're just going to go fumble around and walk around in the desert? Or would we like to use the map? Would you like to use a GPS?
Go ask the guy that's already walked that path and been to Texas how he got there. But you focus on things that you can control. There's a waste of energy to try and affect things that you have no control over. That referee, your opponent, your mom, your dad, all those other things that were adverse things for you, you didn't focus on any of that stuff. You focused on what you could do, what you could control. That's what stuck out to me. You were diligent. You put yourself out there. You weren't afraid to be vulnerable and be in some of those bad positions. Those are all great lessons. And then you asked all the right questions. You were willing to say, hey, how did you do that? And you were with the right people that are saying, yeah, this is how it worked for me. And you're going to have to take that information and figure out how it works for you, because it's going to work differently for you than it did for that guy. Because we're all different. We're all wired different.
First time I trained with Derek Brunson, he put me in, he just go through the whole rotation of like front headlock sequences, you know, Darce, Anaconda, guillotine, Darce, Anaconda, guillotine. Yeah. And he choked me so many times. And it was, I was never upset with him, but I was upset, you know. I was like, what the I was mad about it. I was never upset with him, but it annoyed me that I had that vulnerability. I'm like, how does this guy choke me 15 times in a couple days? It just at will catches me. No, we were only training I didn't have my blue belt yet. But you know, my neck stayed sore. I asked him before he left that week, I said, could you come back in 3 months? You come back in about 3 months. And we looked at the schedule. I think it was 12 weeks, like a week before. And he's like, this week I could. And I'm like, do that, please. Let's do that. And my neck stayed sore for 12 weeks because I trained that again and again and again and again, escaping from those, Darce, Anaconda.
Protecting your neck.
Yeah. My neck stayed sore because I just trained it again and again and again. When he come back, he couldn't do that. He beat me up 10 other ways. I'll give him credit for that. I don't hurt my feelings to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
He beat me up 10 new ways, but he was impressed too. He's like, he couldn't touch me on those spots. He couldn't do that. There was a hell of a lot of progress in that space for 3 months. So I would focus on things like that, as far as like goal setting, like it never broke my spirit or made me feel like, there's times I was very discouraged or frustrated, but I made a decision I was going to do that. And I never backtracked on that, like I'm going to quit or, I would just look at it as like small chunks like that. Like, all right, we got a vulnerability here. Let's fix that. Let's make it awfully hard for anybody to do that to me. And then I'd try it with everybody. I'd have everybody come over and say, here, Taurus Anaconda guillotine.
Yeah.
Tighten it up, make me fight out of it, And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, So that's not comfortable, but I learned really quickly, And I think if you could accelerate that process of anything new you're going to be good at, it's going to be clumsy and awkward, and you're going to look like, and if you stick to it and your brain works halfway, and you got some good coaches and mentors, then after a while it's going to get pretty damn good. After a while, it might be quite excellent, So I just kind of had to accept that. Like, that's just reality. That's how life is. Most people won't do that. So if you're one of the people that's willing to do that and willing to do that in different categories, I mean, you've been successful in many categories, and I would imagine that you weren't successful in each of those categories on your first day, that there's a learning curve. And
absolutely.
Yeah. But you had confidence. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but like, I would imagine that you had confidence, like, well, I did this thing and this thing and this thing. I could probably figure out this other thing too.
Yeah, it's again.
And let me be smart enough to ask for help from somebody who did it.
Solving and being willing to be vulnerable, ask for help. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like we said, don't focus on things you have no effect over. What you're wasting your energy. There are certain things that you control. You control your attitude, your work ethic, how much effort you're willing to put into something, and that diligence. Those are things he described as he was transitioning through being 4 and 10 and on down the road, facing a lot of adversity, setbacks. That's what athletics is. You're going to lose. You're going to get knocked on your ass in life too. So focus on the things you actually have control over. Let the rest of it go. It's a waste of energy. Draw that map, be diligent, stay on task. Don't let the mental skills go. We always focus on the physical stuff, but we don't spend very much time. And what do we say? We say, 90% of athletics is mental, but we spend very, very little time working on the mental skills to deal with the adversity of our sport. And I would say that those same skills translate to your everyday life and every other adversity you're going to face too. So recognize how to apply them to the other things you're passionate about, not just your athletics. But, again, try to keep it as simple as possible. The more complicated you make it, the harder it is to execute. Creating these personas and all these other things that fighters and athletes do sometimes only get in the way of what really matters, which is going out and doing exactly what you're trained to do. So keep it simple. Don't complicate it. Life's complicated enough. This world is complicated enough. Be true, authentic, and keep it simple. And be diligent.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.